the news we're all waiting for. Jayden Daniels has a knee sprain, not even ruled out for this week against the Raiders. I think a lot of people freaked out. I think there was some bad information out there. Now we have some information. Let's have a podcast. What up, everybody? JP Finlay, Beltway Football. The big man Mitch Tischler's here. We're brought to you by MGM National Harbor. Just the facts, man. Jayden Daniels got hit a bunch in that game, late in the fourth quarter, 2 hits. I actually tweeted out the video. Kerwin got awesome video of both the big hits where Jayden got up. First time kind of wobbly, the second time grabbing the knee before he got up a little more wobbly. A lot of speculation coming out of Green Bay. Grant Paulson had the report Friday evening, I think, that he got an MRI. Sunday, I reported that I heard it was nothing major. He'll definitely miss practice time. Monday, Dan Quinn talks. He's truly day-to-day. It's a sprain. We don't know where it's going to go. Pretty consistent with DQ and frankly with what I expected. I knew it was nothing major. Maybe he misses this Raiders game. Maybe he doesn't. I think this goes to the wire. I think they go to Sunday morning. I think we get a lot of the same from DQ. Like, yeah, he's got to hit all the markers. We'll see. I don't think he practices. Maybe there's a limited on Friday. I don't think if Mariota goes is that bad. I know a lot of people are going to be like, just rest him no matter what. I don't think that's how they'll operate. I think if he clears and is ready to go, they'll play him, and I know he'll want to play. I think giant big picture, considering like 15 quarterbacks got hurt this weekend and, just where we are in the universe, I don't think this is that big of a deal, but I understand some might feel differently. Hello, Mitchell.
Hello, JP. That was a lot. And I think there's a lot.
I just thought we should run through everything.
Yeah. I'm saying there's a lot to get through here because there is going to be a lot of consternation amongst the fan base about whether he should or shouldn't play. We know Jayden, and Jayden's a competitor, and he's going to want to be out there with everything that he has, and it's going to be up to the coaches to hold him back if, and it's a big capital if it's necessary. This group has been very good about the way that they've handled a lot of injuries. I think, you can look back to almost what we went through with training camp with some of these injuries. Monday, Dan Quinn talked about, hey, we'll know a little bit more on Wednesday. When we talk to him on Wednesday, it'll be, hey, he hasn't practiced yet because we'll talk to Dan Quinn before practice.
Right.
We'll talk again on Friday, and at that point he'll have gotten in a limited or whatever portion of practice, and they'll say, well, it's a game time decision. So for those that are expecting any real updates between now and Sunday at 12 o'clock or 11 o'clock in the morning, I don't know that there's going to be a ton of information there. What we do know is that Jayden played through a rib injury last year. We know he's a competitor and a fighter, and he's going to want to be out there. And quite frankly, if there's nothing worrisome structurally about whatever this injury is, the sprained knee, which sprained knee can mean a million different things. I think that as long as the pain isn't too great, that he should be out there, and he will be out there. But ultimately, it's going to come down to this coaching staff being smart with him and the medical staff and all of that. And for the fans that are old enough and are sitting here having those RG3 throwbacks, I don't think it's similar to that, other than, they're both quarterbacks and they both had knee injuries. I do think that this coaching staff will be much more responsible in terms of trying to figure out whether he should go or shouldn't go than necessarily the crew that was there for RG3.
Two things. One, there is no RG3 comparison. RG3 blew out his knee. He blew it out. This is not that.
I
So
agree.
I think starting there, yes, I think this staff will be more responsible. I also think Jayden will be more responsible. I think Robert was pretty damn irresponsible in a lot of that. There was also a marketing campaign behind All In for week 1. Like, it was just, Jayden is going to push as hard as he can to play. Jayden will probably be pretty damn salty if they don't let him play, is my guess. You expect these guys to make grown-up decisions. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
I
you expect them to, and I think that they will. The point of the matter is, I don't think either of us are speculating or will speculate on whether we're going to see 5 out there on Sunday. I think that, the update that we got from DQ, I think, is legitimately day to day, and I think we both agree that he's going to have at least a questionable designation, come the Friday, the last injury report that they get before Friday, and we're going to see Jayden out on the field at 9 or 10 in the morning, which is when traditionally injured players go out and test their injuries before a game, and the coaching staff or the medical staff kind of give a thumbs up, thumbs down thing. And I think it's going to come down to that time period before we know whether he's going to be under center.
I don't know that we will well, what's going to be really interesting is who does the media avail on Wednesday. And maybe that's not that interesting because one thing doesn't, reflect the other. But I can't imagine Jayden really wants to do it and get asked about his knee 100 times. And the NFL mandates that a quarterback talks, so somebody's going to talk because the NFL is the ultimate content machine. Um, but we
It'd be
don't know.
they just
You're
threw
totally
Sam
right.
Hartman up there.
What's that?
It'd be great if they just threw Sam Hartman up there.
Josh Johnson.
Josh
Um,
Johnson.
Yeah, like we don't know. We're not gonna know. They're gonna tell us as little as possible. Um, DQ will talk Friday after practice, and like maybe that's when you get the questionable or which one doesn't exist? Probable doesn't exist, right?
Right.
Doubtful still exists.
Questionable and doubtful.
I
And
almost feel
out.
like, well, certainly out. I almost feel like Friday. I think it's DNP, doubtful is my Jayden injury report prediction.
That's a good injury report prediction. I imagine it'll be something. It might be DNP limited. I think he's going to get a limited practice in at least once and maybe twice this week. Quite frankly, none of the designations really matter because it's not like obviously after Thursday's game that offense needs to get together and practice together. I'm not saying Jayden doesn't have to practice, but there are players that have to practice to play in the game on Sunday. Jayden Daniels isn't necessarily one of those players. Would you like to see it? Yes. Does he have to? No.
Are you in the rest them no matter what camp? What do you say to the rest them no
Absolutely
matter
not. Listen, I trust this medical team much more than I have a medical team for the Burgundy and Gold in a long time. And if they evaluate him all week and decide that he can go out and play and that he's not risking further injury, it's just a pain tolerance issue, then yes, go out and play. He's probably going to be, and I probably want him in one of those, bulky, knee braces just as an extra measure of security. But quite frankly, DQ said it, the team operates best when it's attacking, and they didn't do that on Thursday against the Packers. I don't know if you can run a full. I don't know if you can have an attack-worthy offense if you take away a big piece of the offense, which is obviously Jayden's legs.
Yeah, part of me wonders if they got a call less like you never want to stop Jayden being Jayden, but on Thursday night, going back and watching it, there was some zone read stuff where he had the chance to keep it and didn't. Um, but that was even early in the game. It wasn't all late, but I don't know. Thursday was such a bad look offensively. Defense played okay in totality. I mean, the
Yeah.
middle of the field was certainly open, but um, I don't know. I think if if it's at all a question, you don't play him. But if it's clear by everybody, you got to play him. It's his team. You want to give him the chance. Like I don't think the notion of like rest him just to rest him, get him fully healthy, doesn't exist in the NFL. Like it's a disconnect between how some fans view it and how coaches and players think.
Right. And I think you also have to balance, does 80% of Jayden Daniels at quarterback give you a better chance to win or 100% of Marcus Mariota? Mariota looked really good, obviously, in the limited that we saw him last year during the season, but he's almost in the same place as Terry McLaurin and company. Like he didn't practice a whole lot during training camp because he had that Achilles or the heel, whatever it was, issue. And you know, is Marcus Mariota a better is does Marcus Mariota give you a better chance to win? I think ultimately has to be the question because not that a week 3 game is a must win by any means, but you'd really like to see them get back on track and have a good showing against a Vegas team that, is a decent team, but certainly not the Packers and probably not quite as bad as the Giants, somewhere at least a little in between.
This is for later in the week. I'm not as convinced as others that I'm surprised by the line at 6.5 for the Raiders game. Now I do get they're going to get a short week and they're traveling west to east, but if you the two things Washington did worst against Green Bay, tight ends over the middle and pass rush, and you got Max Crosby and Brock Bowers. Like the two things they did really bad against Green Bay are the two things that Vegas excels in. But whatever, that's for down the line. Um, if they have to go with Mariota, I feel very comfortable in Mariota.
Yeah.
Uh, I'm not particularly concerned that he missed a lot of camp or basically all of camp. Are you concerned?
Um, I'm not I'm not concerned, but I'm also not concerned. We haven't I mean, Marcus hasn't had a real full uh complement of throws in a practice. Granted, as a backup quarterback, he gets some once we get to the regular season, and certainly probably Wednesday and Thursday he'll get a good opportunity to get in that. But as much as we talk about the offense being, a little disjointed, and part of that because of the training camp schedule and the number of people that practice and stuff like that. Like Marcus hasn't really worked with those guys a ton either. The one thing that I think that we saw as a kind of change from last year to this year, at least in the quarterback room, and when we talked to Marcus Mariota, he talked about it. We asked him about, hey, like, you missed time, is getting back tough. And Marcus was like, Jayden sets the tone. Jayden sets the timing on the throws. Jayden, works with the receivers, and it's my job, it's our job as the backup quarterbacks to find that timing and to adjust to it. So when Mariota does come in, it's not like the offense is starting all over again per se. He's picking up where, hopefully Jayden left off, and so he should be able to step in and play. But the 3 weeks of or two plus weeks of individual drills and no team practice certainly is a setback, and it's pretty early in the season for him to be kind of back in rhythm. So I'm not concerned, but not concerned. That's your long answer to a yes or no question, like I
I
normally
kind of
do.
think that's where we are with all things Washington at this point. Like, I'm not concerned about Jaden's situation, but I'm not concerned. I am fully not concerned about Mariota missing time. I think his level of vets, like the amount of snaps and reps that dude's brain has seen,
Yeah,
I think he can be at speed kind of right away. Um, but like I had a zillion people texting me over the last 24 hours, like mostly like fans, like,
dude.
yo, what's the problem? What's the problem? And I'm like,
Yeah,
dude, it's not good. Like it's this is not a good thing for Jayden, but it's not the end of the like what's going on in Cincinnati with Joe Burrow is bad. That is really bad. The Vikings with JJ McCarthy, bad. Like this isn't that either. You know what I mean? And I know there was like dumb social media or like text speculation going on that this is really bad, and I tried to tell people I didn't believe any of that. Um, um, so I think, you know, maybe not out of the woods, but like, like the soccer fields and football fields you grow up playing on as a kid that are clear, but then the woods are like over to the side. Like you're a couple feet in the woods, but like you can see the field. Like you're very not deep in the woods, but like you're a step or two in. Like, oh, the football run rolls into the woods, you got to go get it out, but like you're never far in.
yeah. I mean, I guess I agree in that you're a little clear, but I think the woods are a little bit closer. I think the expectations for this season create a situation where, you are a little bit there is a little bit more urgency to get things done. And as much as we talk about the Jayden injury being a big injury, John Bates, Noah Brown, both of those
Yeah,
are
so I did
pretty
want to
big
get to
too.
everything else.
Yeah.
Before we get to it, is this an emergency pod? And well, let's be real. I think to qualify as an emergency pod, we would have recorded this a couple hours ago, but our overlords want this on YouTube, so we had to record it tonight. Um, is this an emergency pod? Like, is this Jaden's situation an emergency?
No, but I think it's an urgency pod where
Ooh,
we're starting to feel the urgency a little bit. So maybe it's not, it's not the highest level, but it's right there.
but that's also to your point about being not concerned or not concerned. Like, we got to try to remind ourselves not to be too freaked out about anything going into week 3. It's September 15th. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Yeah. Listen, there's a lot of football left, and even if Jayden does miss maybe this week or even next week per se, whatever. We're not even going to speculate on that. Regardless of what happens this week, it's not a referendum on the rest of the season, just like what happened on Thursday wasn't a referendum on the rest of the season.
Do you feel a little bit better after watching the Lions go blast the Bears and then the Giants moving the ball well against the Cowboys? Now, caveats like the Bears aren't very good and the Lions were able to drill them, and the Cowboys defense is pretty bad, and the Giants were able to move the football. But like if you looked at the first 2 weeks collectively now with a lot more data points, like Green Bay's defense shut down two really good offenses. And the Lions proved that they're still pretty damn explosive the following week. Washington's defense shut down the Giants, and then the following week, the Giants were able to move the football pretty well. Like if you want to do transitive property on that, I think you can feel a little bit better, you know, 5 days after getting your ass kicked in Green Bay. Maybe that's a stretch.
Yeah, so I feel a little bit better, but I feel a little bit better because this team played like complete and total dog do on Thursday night, and yet they didn't get blown out. They were relatively close. There were a couple plays here and there where had they flipped, you maybe saw a JJ McCarthy type comeback in the fourth quarter. It's the same type of thing that we saw last year from Jayden here and there. But I don't feel better because that's a team that if you get to where you want to go, you're probably going to see again later in the season. You'd like to have had a better showing earlier. There aren't as many new pieces this year as there were last year, particularly when you take into account the big picture with all the coaches and everything. And you'd like for them to be a little more consistent and a little further ahead than where they are right now. But at the end of the day, it is only week two. I think you disagree with me on this, and I posted it on whatever different social sites. They got blown out by the Bucks last year in week one and came back and won in the playoffs. It's not apples to apples. They're two totally different teams. There's a lot brand new last year between coaching staff and starting quarterback and all those things. But it does point out that like you can have a bad performance at some point in the season and come back and put up a better performance and still go and beat that team. And so I feel better in that as I went back and watched a game a little bit over again, the Commanders should have lost by three plus touchdowns. And the fact that they kept it within 7 to 14 points or so the whole night does make me feel a little bit better on the back end.
DQ kind of said that too. He's like, man, we're all pissed. That wasn't what we do. But at the same time, it was we're down a touchdown in the fourth quarter. I feel like we got to be better, but it wasn't maybe as awful as it looked. I kind of think Green Bay just didn't put them away when they should have. Eventually they did. Let's get to all the other injuries. DQ on Eckler. We all knew Eckler was cooked. I mean,
Yeah.
the Achilles was gone. Um, Quinn very much makes the point of saying, like, yeah, it's not Bill's job now. He's like, Austin, there's not a plug and play for Austin. What he does is unique. Chris Rodriguez is going to be involved. He did say Bill's capable in pass pro, otherwise we wouldn't have him out there. I don't understand the reluctance to, and maybe you just don't want to say it, but like I'd like to see on the field Bill get a much larger role,
Yeah.
even with Rodriguez. I don't know that that's coming. They add Chase Edmonds to the practice squad, a guy that's had a lot of success in Cliff's offense. He had like 130 catches over 4 years playing for Cliff in Arizona. Now he is coming off a knee injury last year. Um, Edmonds can play though.
Good play. I mean, you're coming off
Sure, that's
you're
fair.
hoping that he's able to come back and be the man that he was, but like, let's be honest, a year off and an ACL is two pretty big things.
I agree. I agree. Um, I don't want to agree with them, but I do think they're going to continue with a big committee approach in Eckler's absence. Do you agree?
I do. I don't know, man. No, I don't. I think
I
Bill
think they're going to. I'm not saying they should. I'd like to see Bill start to get a much bigger role.
I think Bill is your starting running back on Sunday. I think Bill gets your lion's share of your touches out of the backfield. But I do think there's still going to be a rotation. I think you're going to see McNichols, you're going to see C-Rod. It's going to be interesting to see what they end up doing here because, you know, uh, Cliff Kingsbury likes his guys. I think there were some questions when they brought in Zach Ertz whether what he still had left in the tank. He showed up and was able to play. Chase Edmonds is one of his guys. Can he come in and be active right away and kind of take that Eckler role? Because that's really like if he's back and feeling good and healthy and has some of the same agility and athleticism that he showed when he was in Arizona, he's a pretty nice, I'm not saying equal player, but equal type of player to what Eckler is, and could step in and play that role pretty quickly.
Um, I think it's going to be a committee as far as starting running back. Yeah, I think it'll be Bill. I'd like to see him get like 15 carries, though. You know what I mean?
I want to see 20 touches out of him. Like I want to see them work him into the pass game a little bit more. He had one target on Thursday, and it wasn't really a catchable ball. I think that his explosiveness is something that will help out this run game a whole lot. And by
Can I
default,
ask a quick question?
yeah,
You said something there about Ertz. Why, as like a group, is there a commitment to try to undersell what Ertz does?
who's doing that?
Just kind of everybody's like, oh, Cliff's got his guys and Ertz can do his thing. Like Ertz is good. He's got 2 touchdowns through 2 games.
I
Like,
don't know if you heard. I said there was questions when Ertz came in about what he had
right.
left.
I didn't mean you. I'm sorry if
Oh,
I
okay. Because he's
phrased that.
because he's proven how valuable he is to this. He is a big part of this offense, and I I think he's a very good player right now. I mean, you look at he's not the Brock Bowers tight end anymore, but
No, he's not an explosive athlete, but even in that Green Bay game, that was a nice touchdown, a nice move he made for
think
the
about it.
touchdown.
After you get by like the Trey McBride and George Kittle and Travis Kelce and Brock Bowers group, I think he's in kind of that next tier of, you know, people love talking about the fantasy world. He's in the next tier of playable every week in fantasy, and I don't know that there's that many tight ends that take over him outside of 5 to 10 other guys.
Yeah, I agree. Continuing down the injury rabbit hole, I asked, what do you do to replace Dietrich Wise? And DQ's like, yeah, I don't know. We got to figure that out. I've liked Jalen Holmes. Bringing him up helps. But Wise is a big, strong. He was a different dude than you have, and that's
Yeah,
probably why you signed him because his size on the edge is different. Um, hate that he's cooked. And I tell me if this makes sense.
please.
Eckler is a better, certainly was, but even maybe now is a better, more dynamic player than Wise, adjusting for position and
Yeah.
their role on the team, right? Like Eckler's the better player of the two, but I think it's easier to replace Eckler's productivity just at that position. You could throw a bunch of different people at it. Then Wise was much more unique in what he brought to the team.
I agree with you. I'm glad you said productivity and not stats, because I don't know that Dietrich Wise was going to go out there
Right,
and
right, right, right.
put up a ton of numbers for you. But his size, his strength, his ability to hold the edge, particularly in a run game, that we're still trying to get a feel for how they are. I thought, DQ was optimistic talking about the run game and that they didn't give up any explosive runs to the running backs. They didn't give up any runs over 10 yards, but they were pretty consistently getting gashed in the run game. So, and that was a lot in the middle. They've moved around this defensive line a whole lot, whether it's Javante Jean-Baptiste, you're going to talk about Jacob Martin, Jalen Holmes. Like, these are all dudes that are going to get an opportunity to kind of fill that first and second down role that Dietrich Wise was playing. I wonder also if
Not
Javon
great.
Kinlaw I wonder if Javon Kinlaw plays a little more on the outside, and then you get the Johnny Newton and Daron Payne in the middle there. Eddie Goldman, Daron Payne, Johnny Newton. It's one thing that we saw them toying around with a lot during camp.
Martin's kind of been moved around a little. Yeah, but like
Yeah,
this is not great. Like Kinlaw was the biggest piece you signed on the D line, but Wise was number two, even probably ahead of Von Miller because Von's role is so specific at this point, and we haven't seen a lot out of Von. Like it's only
yeah.
2 games in, but the Wise thing is a big deal, and I don't think there's a direct replacement for him. We have now seen Chris Moore moved up. DQ called John Bates and Noah Brown long shots to play against the Raiders.
That's where I wanted to get to.
I almost want to separate the two.
Yes, let's
Losing
separate the two.
Bates, losing Bates is a really big deal, especially as Connerly has struggled and Max Crosby's coming to town. Brown, to me, man, you love the guy, but at some point you got to stop depending on him. You know what I mean?
I think it'll be a good opportunity to see Jalen Lane and Luke McCaffrey get in with that starting offense as the kind of third receiver there, and you'll have a good chance to see for those guys to prove what they can do. And I think it's going to be an important game for a guy like Luke if he's able to get out there as that in that slot, that third receiver, depending on wherever they line him up, to kind of show and quiet some folks because there are a lot of questions swirling about him. I think Jalen Lane has an opportunity. I've loved what he's done in the kick
Punt
return
game.
game and the punt
Yeah.
return game. But we haven't seen a ton offensively. It's been 2 weeks into a season. I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with that, but this is a good chance for somebody else to step up and do what they can do because Noah Brown, Noah Brown was a post cut down day signing, didn't get claimed, joined the Commanders, and turned out to be a very nice piece. But he's perpetually injured, and that's a problem. Like you say, the best ability is availability, and quite frankly, the productivity of the first couple weeks hasn't been great from him. I just keep going back to that third
Bad
down
drop in
catch.
that Packers game.
Yeah, I mean, you don't want to pin the game. I'm not pinning the game on one play, but
No.
talk about some of those plays that could have been, sparks for this offense or for this team that would have maybe turned the tide of momentum, and that's certainly one that sticks out. But the John Bates injury is, to me, outside of Jayden, well, I mean, the other guys are out for the season, so maybe they're bigger, but the John Bates injury is a big effing deal. He does a ton. All we talk about is how good of a blocker he is, but he does such a good job, as that doing that as a chipper and staying in and helping out those guys. I think the combination of Nick Allegretti and Josh Connerly were, borderline atrocious on Thursday. Not borderline, maybe just outright atrocious. And you need to see better. And you better believe that Max Crosby is going to be licking his lips. But you go to week one and you look at, Kayvon Thibodeau, and certainly he got to the quarterback on that, or Brian Burns did, on the one that he beat Connerly. But, that group didn't get after Jayden particularly hard. You look at what the Packers did, and it was the exact opposite. So you got to find some consistency, particularly on that side, particularly if you're talking about a quarterback who might have some limited mobility because of a knee injury. You don't want him to get stuck in a spot and take a bigger shot than he has to. So as much as I talked about Jalen Lane, Luke McCaffrey having to step up, if Bates ultimately can't go, I think that Ben Sennett, Colson Yankoff. I don't know. I would assume Ben Sennett would get the first kind of reps as your second tight end to step in there, but he's got to play a lot bigger, a lot stronger, a lot more physical than we've seen from him so far in his tenure in Washington.
Agree with all that. One guy that just signed with Dallas is Jadeveon Clowney. I kind of wondered if after Wise goes down, if Clowney might have helped. Big guy on the edge, can rush the passer. He's not an option. I wonder if they call Clelin Ferrell,
Right.
somebody they're familiar with who hasn't been great but is available. Looking around, there are still a ton of actual free agent wideouts out there. Um, like Tyler Boyd, Michael Gallup was already here. Chark Osborne's still out there. Um, None of that really excites me. I'd rather just give Lane and McCaffrey the looks for a while, and hell, maybe call Ja'Cory Brooks up. Like,
Right.
they're gonna call Chris Moore up. Chris Moore actually helped him week one. Oh, the totality of it all, big man. Eckler's gone. Wise is gone. Bates and Brown seem like they're out at least a week, if not. All he said was soft tissue. So
Right.
um,
Not great. Jonathan Jones too was in the same
yeah.
boat in terms of injury wise. I think it's
Do
just
you
noteworthy.
and obviously the Jayden situation? Like, do you feel like are you feeling like you got to start amending some of predictions, or like is do you feel like okay, these injuries are starting to have an impact?
Uh, it's too early to say if the injuries are starting to have an impact just because we haven't seen this team play without the injured players. I'm not amending any predictions because quite frankly, as we talk about the different replacements and players that are going to have to jump in, this team is still better than Vegas. On paper, is better than Vegas. Should be better than Vegas. The Raiders when they get out there. So I do think that they should still should win this game. And you start looking at the games that are coming up, and certainly I'm not saying anything is play the Falcons, which is a tough one on the road. Chargers on the road. Bears on Monday night. I don't think it changes much in terms of my outlook of this team, but I do think that it puts a little more pressure and a little more onus and hopefully a little more urgency on these guys to step up and start playing some real damn football. Because quite frankly, what we saw, from the middle of the season through the end of the season last year is this is a step back in terms of at least offensively what we saw then. And you got to get back on track, and you're going to have to score some more points. And this defense, I think the offense hurt the defense in New Orleans. I mean, in Green Bay by not being able to stay on the field. I think that you got to start seeing the offense, and Jayden start coming together quickly.
Yeah. I mean, you certainly would like it to be this week. Oh, buddy. Here we are, man. Week 3. Life comes at you fast. I
Listen,
think we're about done unless you had something else.
yeah, the Chiefs are 0-2. Like it's not every there's a lot of football left in this season, and I think a lot of fans felt like the sky was falling on Thursday, and certainly when you get prisoner of the moment, you get stuck in there. I think it's easy to be overly frustrated and annoyed and upset about what we saw in a national TV game, but I hope that those folks slept on it. Had a couple bourbons over the weekend, maybe some wings, watched some football, and kind of were able to recenter themselves and remember that you still have a pretty damn good player helming this team at quarterback, and this team is destined for better than what we saw against the Packers.
Agreed. All right, let's make some picks. It's a doubleheader Monday night. Bucks right now are down 10-7. The line in this, I think Tampa was favored by 2.5. What do you got, Mitchell? With the
I
added
was
advantage of having the Texans up 3 right now.
Yeah, I mean, I'm on the Texans. I was on the first half over as well. So hopefully they score a couple more points. Got to get to 21 there.
It's got to
Um,
be 17 in the first quarter.
oh, it's 10-7. I thought you said
10-7,
10.
yeah.
Oh, I thought you said 10 nothing. Um,
Baker Mayfield just threw it to himself. Pause.
who had Brett catch?
I don't know if that was me or you, but it sounded like you just cut out. Also, you've had your background blurred the whole time.
Oh, I've been doing my photog interviews, and I just kind of have been doing it for that. But
But it
Brett,
weirds
Brett
me
first,
out.
sorry, I'll change it. Brett Favre's first completion was to Brett Favre. There we
That
go. I'm
tracks
blowing
for Brett
background.
Favre.
Yeah,
Uh,
I know. So yeah, I'm on the Falcons. I mean, I'm sorry, I'm on the Texans and the Chargers tonight.
I'm on the Raiders.
The Raiders.
The Raiders. You got, I don't know, getting points at home. Give me the Raiders.
I'm not a big Harbaugh fan, but what we saw week 1, and granted it was in Brazil, so maybe it was South American aided, but that was a pretty unstoppable offense over there.
Yeah, they look good. I mean, if Herbert plays like that and they run the ball like that, hell, we'll see him in 3 weeks.
Yeah, we sure will.
Um, remember we did our when will they lose their first game thing? I had LA. You had like Philly.
No, I think I had Chicago. I've been saying I thought Monday night the Chicago was going to be
Yeah.
the gotcha game, but
Well,
yeah,
it was week 2. We did all allow, week 2 in Green Bay is gonna be really hard.
you know what? It's not the worst thing in the world to take a punch early in the season and get woken up out of the days of of all the praise and everything that everyone's been getting. So we'll see what happens, but I think this team will bounce back, and I think we're going to see a good showing on Sunday.
I actually, without a game to work this weekend, I actually made some money on the old books. How about that?
Good for you. Good for you. I had a
I had a good college Saturday and then a smart, calculated Sunday where I didn't bet the board. There were 2 plays I liked, 2 plays I hit.
I had a decent day Saturday. Had a very good slate, very good showing in the early slate, and the beer towers and wings caught up to me, and I went. I bet the board. We'll say that I bet the board, and things didn't come back so well.
Where were you? What's the place you like in Pike and
We
Rose?
were at Sport and Social
That's your spot.
with some joker. I don't know if you saw the picture I sent. I think I put it in the group chat. Some joker in a Carson Wentz Commanders jersey, just cheering his what's off for the Eagles the entire time. It was as the beers were starting to flow. I was getting a
I've
little
seen that
more.
version of Mitch.
Yeah, I was getting a little more vocal with him. He wasn't really that into engaging with me, but that was something.
All right, I got to go. I'm going to go help put the girls to bed. Carson Wentz is starting on Sunday for the Vikings. Things can always be worse, people. Take a deep breath, go for a walk. You made it this far. I have a beer.